Did you know that after 60, the seeds for nearly every major health threat, those that hit hardest later, are already taking root? We're talking about 5 culprits that don't just end lives after 75. They start chipping away at your independence right now. Too many people assume fading energy, shaky balance, or a foggy mind is just getting older. Wrong. These are warning lights, and what you do in your 60s can stop them from flashing red. The truth? Small choices today can keep you strong, sharp, and free for decades, or let those silent thieves steal your best years. Most folks don't spot the danger until they're sidelined, dismissing little signs or thinking they've got time. You do, but only if you act now. In this video, we're unveiling the 5 biggest threats that could rob you of your freedom after 75, and how to shut them down starting today. Stick with me to the end, because what you learn could lock in a life of vitality, not limitation. Let's get to it. Cause 1. Cardiovascular disease, the energy robber. Heart disease isn't some distant grim reaper that only swings its scythe when you're deep into your later years. It's already scheming in your 60s, laying traps you might not even notice. Sure, it's the #1 threat that claims lives after 75. But don't be fooled. It's not waiting politely until then to start its work. Right now, in this decade, it's quietly sapping your stamina, draining the vitality you used to take for granted. Your heart, that tireless engine that's powered you through life, is starting to feel the strain. It's working overtime. Arteries are stiffening like old pipes. Blood pressure is creeping up like a slow tide. And plaque is building up in the shadows, all quiet-like, clogging the works. You might catch a hint of it in small, sneaky ways. A huff of breath just crossing the living room. A sudden need for a nap when you used to power through the day without blinking. Sound familiar? Maybe you've felt that little catch in your chest or noticed you're winded after climbing a flight of stairs. Think that's normal? Just getting older? Think again. It's not. Those signs, shortness of breath, a tight squeeze in your chest, or ankles swelling up like they're holding onto water for dear life, aren't badges of age. They're your heart waving a red flag, practically begging you to pay attention before it's too late. Ignore those warnings, and you're not just playing a game of chance. You're rolling loaded dice on a future where you're stuck on the couch, watching life pass by instead of living it. Or worse, you could end up in a hospital bed, wondering why you didn't act sooner. But it doesn't have to go down like that. Take Susan, for instance, a 62-year-old dynamo who lived for hiking trails with her grandkids, kicking up dust and breathing in the wild air. She loved those outings, the kind that make you feel alive. But then came the fatigue, a heavy tiredness that dragged at her heels. She brushed it off, chalked it up to, well, I'm not 30 anymore, until a scare, a sharp pang and a dizzy spell sent her straight to the doctor's office. That wake-up call hit hard, but it also lit a fire. She didn't sit back and accept defeat. Instead, she tweaked her life one step at a time, swapped out greasy bacon for nutrient-packed kale, cut back on the salty snacks that used to be her go-to, and started piling her plate with veggies and fish like salmon, rich with omega-3s. She laced up her shoes for daily walks, nothing fancy, just steady steps around the block, and made sure to check her blood pressure and cholesterol like clockwork. 6 years later, at 68, Susan's back on those trails, her grandkids racing to keep up, her heart beating strong and free. You can do that too. It's not rocket science, and it's not too late. Start by testing your cholesterol and blood pressure every 6 months. If you can't remember the last time you did it, pick up the phone and book that appointment today. Swap the salt shaker for spices that wake up your meals without taxing your heart. Load up on greens and fish to fuel your body right. And get moving. 30 minutes of brisk walking or some gentle yoga keeps that heart pumping like it's meant to. Your 60s aren't a winding down phase. They're your shot to keep the engine roaring loud and proud. Don't let it stall out on you. Take the wheel now, and you'll still be cruising strong when others are stuck in neutral. Cause 2. Stroke, the sudden jailer. A stroke doesn't just knock on your door with a warning. It kicks it down and locks you up in your own body faster than you can blink. It's one of the top killers waiting in the wings for later years. But don't kid yourself. The groundwork, the sneaky little cracks in your defenses, are being laid right now in your 60s. Picture this. A clot jams up a blood vessel, or one bursts like a busted pipe, cutting off oxygen to your brain. Boom. Just like that, Speech evaporates, movement shuts down, and control slips through your fingers. You're trapped, a prisoner in a body that won't listen. The real kicker? It's a ninja, a silent stalker you don't see coming. 1 minute you're fine, the next your face is drooping on one side, your arms too weak to lift, and your words come out garbled like a bad radio signal. Those signs creep in, quiet and sly, and if you miss them, if you brush them off as nothing, you're toast. Time's the whole game here. Act slow, hesitate even a little, and you're not just risking a bad day, you're trading your independence for a wheelchair. A life of freedom for one where someone else has to tie your shoes. Imagine Tom, 64, a guy who loved his morning routine. Coffee in hand, newspaper spread out, the works. One day, he feels a weird numbness in his leg, a little tingle that doesn't quite sit right. Just a cramp, he tells himself, shaking it off like it's no big deal. He's tough, right? But an hour later, that coffee mug slips from his grip, crashing to the floor. His hand won't cooperate, his legs gone wobbly, and by the time he's rushed to the ER, it's too late. The damage is done. Brain cells starved of oxygen, connections fried. Now he's relearning to walk, step by painful step, when he could have been out there living instead. That's the gut punch. He didn't have to be Tom. You don't either. You've got the power to slash your odds and keep that ninja at bay. Starting today. First, tame your blood pressure. It's the stroke kingpin, the ringleader behind most of these attacks. Get it checked. Keep it steady, because high numbers are like an open invitation. Quit smoking. Those puffs constrict your vessels, practically rolling out the red carpet for clots. Cut the cocktails too. Booze jacks up pressure and throws off the balance. Then walk daily. Nothing fancy, just 30 minutes of steady steps to keep blood flowing smooth, washing away the risk of clogs. If your heart ever flutters, skips a beat, or feels off, don't shrug it off. Talk to your doc about blood thinners. One tiny pill could be the shield that saves your freedom, stopping a clot before it even thinks about striking. And here's your secret weapon. Know the fast signs. Face drooping, arm weakness, speech slurring, end time. Spot any of those, and you call for help right now. No second guessing. Every minute you wait, millions of brain cells die, taking chunks of your life with them. Your 60s aren't for sitting on the sidelines, watching control slip away. They're for living loud, bold, and free. This isn't some inevitable fate you're doomed to. It's a fight you can win. Don't let that ninja catch you off guard. Strike first, fight back, and keep your life yours. 'Cause 3. Falling. The balance bandit. One fall can ground you for good, pinning you down like a thief that's been casing your house for years. And it's not just a problem that waits until you're past 75 to strike. No, this bandit's already brewing trouble right now. In your 60s, setting up its ambush. After you hit 60, your body starts shifting in ways you might not notice at first. Bones thin out, losing their old steel, muscles soften, not quite as taut as they once were, and a little wobble. Barely a hiccup can turn a simple staircase into a minefield waiting to blow. Falls aren't just minor oops moments that leave you with a bruise and a sheepish grin. They're brutal. They fracture hips, splinter confidence, and before you know it, you're chained to a chair, watching the world from a seat you never wanted. Sure, hip breaks skyrocket later, exploding into a full-blown crisis after 75. But don't sleep on this. The risk spikes hard in your 60s. Half the tumbles you take in this decade don't just dust off. They leave lasting damage, scars that don't fade, mobility that doesn't bounce back. It's not a question of if you'll trip, it's how bad it'll be when you do. Unless you act. Picture Linda, 63, a woman who lived for her garden, hands in the dirt, coaxing flowers to bloom. One day, she's hustling through the house, catches her foot on a stray cord. Nothing dramatic, just a stumble, but that nothing turned into a sprained ankle, a twist that swelled and ached. She figured it'd heal quick, a week tops. Instead, it stretched into months off her feet, hobbling around, leaning on walls, her garden growing wild without her. Even now, she's still shaky, second-guessing every step. That old sureness gone. It's a gut punch to think a single misstep could rewrite your life like that. But here's the thing. It's fixable. You don't have to let this bandit rob you blind. Start with your bones. Check your bone density, because weak ones snap like dry twigs under pressure. Get serious about loading up on calcium and vitamin D. They're the reinforcements your skeleton needs to stand tough. Then steady yourself. Tai Chi or simple squats aren't just exercises. They're balance boot camp, sharpening your reflexes, keeping you solid when the ground tries to betray you. And don't stop there. Declutter your space like it's a mission. Install rails along stairs and in the bathroom. Swap dim bulbs for bright lights that cut through the dusk. And kick those slippery rugs to the curb. Your home shouldn't be a trap waiting to spring. Make it a fortress that holds you up. Feeling off balance some days? Like the floor's playing tricks? Grab a cane. It's not weakness, it's power. A tool to keep you in the game. Striding instead of sidelined. Linda's still fighting to get her old stride back. But you don't have to join her in that struggle. Your 60s aren't some shaky tightrope walk to stumble through. They're for striding bold and free. Head high, feet firm. This isn't about dodging every pebble in your path. It's about building a foundation so strong that when life tries to trip you, you don't just stay standing. You keep moving forward. Secure your footing now, because the balance bandit's watching. And you're not giving it an inch. Cuz 4. Respiratory tract infection, the lung leech. A cold's no biggie, right? Just a sniffle. A little inconvenience you power through with tea and a tissue. Until it's not. When it turns into pneumonia. It's a lung leech, sucking the breath right out of you. And it's a top killer waiting to pounce after 75. But don't get it twisted. Your 60s are where this sneaky menace starts setting the stage, rigging the game against you. Your immunity isn't the fortress it once was. It's dipping, softening, leaving cracks for something as simple as a cough to sneak in and morph into a full-blown crisis. That's especially true if you're carrying baggage like asthma, diabetes, or high sugar. Those conditions are like VIP passes for infections. Rolling out the welcome mat. A stubborn hack that won't quit. A fever that lingers. Or a gasp when you're just sitting still. Those aren't seasonal hiccups you can shrug off with a "that's just the weather." No, they're a lung SOS. A blaring alarm your body's sounding to get your attention. Leave it unchecked. Let it fester. And you're not just looking at a rough week. You're bedridden, tethered to a machine, or worse, fighting for air you used to take for granted. Take Mark, 61. A guy who lived for his bike rides. The kind where you feel the wind whip past and your lungs stretch full and free. One chilly day, he notices a chest rattle. A little roughness that grates with every breath. No big deal, he thinks, brushing it off like it's just dust from the road. 2 weeks later, that rattle's a roar. Pneumonia's got him flat on his back, hooked to oxygen in a sterile hospital room. His bike gathering cobwebs in the garage. He couldn't pedal. Couldn't even stand without shaking. All because he let that little cough slide. But Mark's a fighter. He clawed his way back. Now, he's armed. Flu shot every fall. Pneumonia jab in his toolkit. And warm socks pulled on tight when winter bites. He's out there again. Tires spinning. Lungs pumping. Proof you can beat this leech at its own game. You can too. It's not complicated. And it's not out of reach. Start with the basics. Vaccinate yearly. Those shots aren't optional extras, they're a shield. A wall that keeps the invaders out. Flu and pneumonia jabs are your first line of defense. Especially as your immune system starts to slack off in your 60s. But don't stop there. Wash your hands like it's a ritual. Scrubbing away the germs that hitch a ride on every doorknob and handshake. Stay cozy when the cold creeps in. Wrap up in layers. Keep a scarf handy. Because chilly air loves to irritate your lungs and invite trouble. Sip water all day. Hydration keeps those airways clear, flushing out the junk before it settles. And eat smart. Pile on oranges, peppers, anything bursting with vitamin C, and toss in some zinc from nuts or seeds to fortify your system like a castle under siege. Mark's back to deep, easy breaths, not desperate wheezes. Because he armored up, and you can too. Your 60s aren't for clutching your chest, praying for air. They're for filling your lungs with life. Big gulps of it, every single day. This leech doesn't get to win unless you let it. Gear up now, and breathe free for decades to come. Cuz 5. Memory loss and Alzheimer's, the self-stealer. Forgetting a name here or there. Who hasn't done that? It's a fleeting annoyance, a shrug and laugh moment. But losing yourself? That's a whole different beast. A gut-wrenching theft that Alzheimer's orchestrates. And while it might kill later, the first whispers of trouble start creeping in during your 60s. It's subtle at first, a quiet erosion, then it turns savage, stripping away pieces of who you are. One day, appointments slip your mind, little dates and times that used to stick like glue. Then faces blur, familiar smiles turning into strangers you can't place. Eventually, it's your story, your own life's chapters, that fade into fog, leaving you grasping at shadows. Don't wave it off as just aging, some inevitable rite of passage. It's not. It's a thief at work, picking the locks of your mind. And it's setting up shop right now in this decade, testing your defenses. But you don't have to stand there helpless while it ransacks your memories. You can fight back, and the fight starts today. Think of Jane, 66. The kind of woman who lit up her book club like a star. She'd dive into novels, spinning tales about characters and plots with a passion that pulled everyone in. Then it started. She'd blank on a storyline mid-sentence, fumble through a discussion she used to ace. At first, it was small, laughable, even, but soon, friends' names slipped away, those anchors of her social world dissolving into blank stares. Now, she leans on notes for everything, scribbled reminders for coffee dates, grocery lists, even who's who in her life. Her spark's still there, flickering, but it's dimmer, weighed down by a thief she didn't see coming. That's the heartbreak of it. Jane didn't have to lose so much so fast. You can push back against this self-stealer. Keep it at bay with weapons you already have. Challenge your brain like it's a muscle begging for a workout. Puzzles that twist your thinking. A guitar you strum into tune. New recipes that make you measure and mix and taste. Keep it buzzing, alive, forging new pathways to outsmart the fade. What you eat matters too. Feed your mind like it's a garden you're tending. Load up on fish, those omega-3s swimming with brain fuel. And pile greens high on your plate, flushing out the junk that clouds your thoughts. Cut the sugar. It's a saboteur, gumming up the works. A fit heart's your ally here. It pumps oxygen and life straight to your head, keeping the gears turning smooth. Don't let it slack. Move, eat right, keep that ticker strong, and stay social. Coffee chats with friends, laughing over old stories. Beat isolation every time. Loneliness is this thief's best friend. Creeping in when you're cut off, don't give it an opening. There's no cure yet, no magic pill to erase Alzheimer's shadow. But action slows it down, buys you time, keeps you you. Jane's still holding on, but you can do more than hold. You can shine. Your 60s aren't for watching memories slip through your fingers like sand. They're for making them, stacking them high, living them loud. This isn't about clinging to what's left, it's about guarding your spark. That electric core that makes you who you are. The self-stealer's lurking, sure, but it doesn't get to win unless you let it. Challenge your mind, fuel your body, stay connected, start now, and you'll still be telling your story. Clear and bold, when others can't find the words. Your 60s? They're not a slow fade into the sunset. They're a rocket ready to blast off. And you're in the pilot's seat. Start moving today. Fuel up with smarter eats. And pop in to see your doctor. Simple steps to ignite a stronger you. Feeling that spark? Toss a 5 in the comments. I'm right here, cheering you on as we chase a life that thrives, not just survives. Hit like, subscribe, share this. It might just light a fire for someone you care about. Stick around. Next time, more secrets to rule your 60s and beyond. Let's do this.